All right, babies, it's that time again. Oh, yeah. We are going to skip Isaiah 23. It's just another one of those long winded promises of destruction to those who don't obey the Lord. So, in the advent of Jesus, I find those passages to be primarily irrelevant. Not that we're not going to experience devastation if we're in disobedience, but to go through them line by line, it's just one image of destruction after another. I think we're going to pass on that. So I went to the Quarian Gospel of Jesus the Christ, and in there we have a familiar passages of Jesus retiring from the group in a remote area to pray for an extended period. And I find that is an extremely useful practice. Similar to what Buddhists do in their meditation, no distractions. It's just you and your mind and your spirit and your heart and your soul, if we want to say that. And what do you do in those times? You give yourself to God. Try to be empty. Don't pay much attention to your distracting thoughts, and let His Spirit teach you, fill you, rejuvenate you, give you inspiration, ideas, things to believe for other people. Cultivating a positive mindset so that when all hell breaks loose, you don't break loose. And quite often I find the Spirit of God will touch me in those moments and give me reassurance and peace and just an overwhelming sense of His presence, so that I'm not feeling alone against the world. It's together with unlimited power that I can stand from all of what the world might try and do to my faith. Yeah, baby. So in this particular passage, Jesus goes away to pray for about 6 hours. And the great thing about being given the Spirit of God is we can cultivate that mindfulness of His presence all day long, so that, yes, 6 hours is a long time to be alone in prayer, but if you compare it to all day long, as we're called to be, then it's only a quarter of the day, right? So Jesus, as usual, when he, or at least in the Quarian Gospel, and probably the Synoptics as well, including John, After he's done praying, usually there's a multitude of people awaiting him, which is probably why he's getting prepared for that, because I'm sure it was, even though he was divinely sourced, it was probably quite an undertaking to be teaching endless pearls of wisdom and healing people of their maladies. So in this case, there is a lack of food for all the people, and Jesus provides food by performing a miracle, multiplying what little food they had so that everyone had enough. Now, do I believe that actually happened? It could have, because God can do anything, especially through Jesus. But given that these things were written decades after his death and resurrection, I could see where his otherworldliness could be exemplified in these types of stories that aren't necessarily based on fact. And even as a story, they still prove to be useful because we have the experience in our lives of offering up to God the little that we have, that being ourselves. And the observation of him multiplying exponentially our abilities to exceed reason so that we can withstand difficulties with the evidence of divine intervention. Oh, yeah. So, yeah. And then what happens? Oh, Jesus says, so who do people say I am? And each of the disciples have their own story, which doesn't sound realistic, because practically every disciple has a different story of what people are saying. They say you're Jeremiah, they say you're Enoch, they say you're Elijah, they say you're John the Baptist, they say so. And then famously, Peter says, "You are the Christ," and Jesus says, "This has been revealed to you by God, and on this confession of yours, the church itself will be built." Every time I wouldn't say every time, but quite often when I'm reminded of that declaration of both Peter and Jesus's response, I think of many churches today that miss that piece because they're building what they think they're building is an enterprise, a business of many people who are giving regularly to the operations, which may not be God's intention, which would be more evident and more long-lasting and more irrefutable if it was built on the revelation that Jesus is the Christ.